The universe doesn't choose the loudest. It chooses the most dangerous, the ones who remember who they are, even after being buried alive. They tried everything to keep you quiet, silenced you with distractions, poisoned your purpose with self-doubt, surrounded you with noise, betrayal, confusion, hoping you'd choke on your own light before ever realizing it was yours. They didn't just want you asleep, they wanted you erased, because you weren't just another voice. They knew you were the echo of a force they could never control. And now they're terrified. Not because you're watching this, but because you're ready now. Ready to see what they spent years trying to hide. Ready to remember the part of yourself that was never meant to bow. The system didn't shake when you were broken. It started to panic the moment you started piecing yourself back together. Before we go any deeper, take a second to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe. Because every single time you react, you send a signal to the algorithm that this message matters, that this truth deserves to be heard. YouTube's system works on energy, and your energy tells it who to wake up next. Help spread this to the other chosen ones, because when we rise together, they fall faster. You weren't supposed to see this. That's what scares them the most. You weren't meant to remember. You weren't meant to question why your path was harder, why your spirit felt heavier, why no one ever really saw you. But you kept seeing more. You weren't meant to ask the real questions, and you damn sure weren't meant to find the answers. But here you are, watching this message, feeling that fire rise again, and realizing this wasn't an accident. This is alignment. See, when the universe chooses someone, it doesn't need permission from this world. It doesn't check credentials. It doesn't ask for approval. And it damn sure doesn't play fair. It marks you in silence, shapes you in struggle, and reveals you through pain. And that's why your enemies are shaking, because the pressure that almost broke you is now fueling the force that's about to break them. You didn't come from chaos. You were carved through it. You weren't made to fit in. You were engineered to collapse everything built on lies. You are what happens when the universe stops asking nicely. They fought you thinking you were alone. They underestimated you because you walked quietly, questioned deeply, and didn't always fight back. But what they didn't see was the universe standing behind you, waiting. Waiting for the moment you stopped doubting, the second you stopped apologizing, the instant you stopped needing their permission to rise. They weren't fighting you, they were fighting what chose you. And you can't beat what flows through the cosmos. Being chosen isn't about fame. It's not about titles. It's not about being liked. It's about being targeted, being tested, and being unbreakable when everything is thrown at you. It's a frequency, a blueprint, a signature the universe imprinted on your soul the moment you arrived here. That signature haunts them. It exposes their illusions. It disrupts the false comfort they built around control. You don't even have to say a word. Your energy is an exorcism. Your presence alone makes liars sweat. And that's why they never wanted this video to reach you. Because once the chosen one remembers, the enemy's expiration date gets stamped. And today, that stamp just hit. So here's your moment of choice. Because now that you've felt this truth crack open inside you, you can either scroll away like it was just another video, or you can stand all the way up. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you're done playing small, done apologizing for your energy, and ready to step into the storm they begged would never reach you. Every comment, every like, every share pushes this message through the cracks in their system. Let them panic. Let them watch. The more this spreads, the faster their illusion collapses. And now, let's get into it, step by step. But fair warning, if you truly are who I think you are, if you're one of the ones they've been trying to keep quiet, something inside you won't let you stop watching. This message, it's not entertainment, it's activation. And if you've made it this far, you're already feeling it. Let's begin. Number 1. They weren't fighting you, they were fighting the universe. They thought they were silencing one person, but they picked a fight with the universe, and the universe never loses its own. Let that sink in. They weren't fighting you, not really. You were just the vessel. What they were really trying to break was what chose you. What they were afraid of was never your voice. It was the frequency inside it. It's not your name they feared. It's your vibration, your alignment, your access to a force they can't manipulate, own, or extinguish. And now, every time you take a step forward, their system cracks under the pressure of your becoming. They knew something most people still don't. When the universe chooses someone, that choice doesn't come with a permission slip. It doesn't wait for qualifications. It doesn't require credentials. It simply is. And that is exactly why they fought so hard to make sure you never found out who you were. Because the moment you did, their power over you died. You weren't just walking around minding your business. You were carrying something ancient, something coded into you that doesn't just wake you up, it wakes others up too. And that ripple, that energy, that's what terrifies them. Not your opinions, not your past, not your pain, but what happens when your light turns all the way on, when you stop suppressing, when you stop doubting, when you stop apologizing for being what they could never control. And here's the cold truth. They knew what you were before you did. That's why they attacked early. That's why your childhood was full of confusion. That's why people turned on you for no reason. That's why you were surrounded by chaos while others lived comfortably numb. You weren't cursed, you were marked by the universe, and they recognized the signature. You ever ask yourself, why me? Why does my life feel like an uphill war when everyone else gets to coast? Here's the answer. Because you carry what they can't replicate. Because your awakening would do more damage than 1,000 voices still asleep. You weren't fighting enemies. You were triggering alarms inside a system that has always feared beings like you. Think of history. Malcolm X wasn't dangerous because he yelled. He was dangerous because he understood. Joan of Arc wasn't burned for fighting. She was burned for hearing something others didn't. Nikola Tesla wasn't erased because he failed. He was erased because he was ahead. And you're cut from the same cloth. You've seen things, felt things, known things you were never taught. You carry the same disruptive frequency. They didn't want to stop you, they wanted to contain what chose you. But the universe can't be contained. You see, when a person is chosen, the laws change. Struggle isn't there to break you, it's there to sharpen you. Isolation isn't punishment, it's positioning. Betrayal isn't failure, it's refinement. Everything they used to try to hurt you has only been activating you. They used fire to destroy you, but all it did was reveal that you are the fire. That's the glitch in their matrix. That's what they'll never understand. You don't burn out, you burn brighter. So when you hear that voice in your head asking, "Why am I always under attack?" Remember this: they don't throw stones at houses with no foundation. They don't waste resources on threats that aren't real. The very fact that your path has been heavy, confusing, unfair, and relentless is proof of your power. They knew you weren't average even before you did, and their mission was simple: make sure you never remember. But you did. That's why you're here. That's why this message reached you. That's why your heartbeat shifted when you started listening. Because deep down, a part of you always knew. You just forgot. And now, the remembering has begun. And they're terrified, because once you fully remember, their game is done. Let them be afraid. Let them feel the tremble in the pit of their stomach every time you step into your voice, your truth, your purpose. Because this isn't just a spiritual awakening, it's a cosmic correction. The universe isn't confused. It chose you with precision. And now that you're aligning with that truth, the false narratives are collapsing. The old systems are shaking. The illusion is fading. You are becoming a living glitch in their program. That's the power of being chosen. You don't just survive the storm, you become it. You don't just break the cycle, you rewrite the code. You don't just wake up, you wake up everyone around you. And that's why their attacks have always felt personal. Because they are, but not because of who you are. Because of what you are. You are a frequency that can't be caged. You are an energy that can't be cloned. You are a force that isn't here to participate. You're here to disrupt. So let them say you're too intense, too deep, too sensitive, too bold. That's their language for, we don't know how to control this. Let them try to discredit you, distance themselves, throw shade at your evolution. None of it touches you anymore, because you're not playing their game. You were never meant to. You were sent to end it. And if you're still doubting your light, still wondering if this really applies to you, let this be your answer. They didn't come after you because you were weak. They came because you were chosen. And now that you remember, they know it's too late. You're not here by accident. You didn't stumble onto this video by chance. The universe led you here. And now that you're aligned, there's no turning back. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the force that sent you. And the universe, it never loses its own. Number 2, you doubted your light. And that was their only win. The only way to dim a sun is to convince it it's a shadow. And that's exactly what they tried to do to you. They couldn't silence your soul, so they whispered just loud enough to confuse it. They couldn't take your light, so they made you doubt it. Because they knew from the beginning that the only way they could ever win was if you turned against yourself. The truth is, they were never strong enough to put out your fire. So instead, they convinced you to hold the extinguisher. They made your own hands the weapon. Think about that. You weren't broken. You were programmed to believe you were too much, too intense, too different, too sensitive, too bold. But all that was ever true was that you were exactly enough to scare the system. Your doubt was their strategy, and every time you questioned your instincts, every time you apologized for your passion, every time you dimmed yourself to make others comfortable, they celebrated. Not publicly, not out loud, but internally. That was their only victory. Making the chosen one forget their own glow. Because let's be real, how do you stop someone you can't overpower? You trick them into believing they were never powerful in the first place. They surrounded you with people who couldn't see your worth, hoping you'd stop looking for it. They placed you in environments that rejected your spirit, hoping you'd shrink to fit them. And when that didn't work, they handed you a mirror distorted just enough to make you see flaws where there was brilliance. It was never about them winning. It was about you not waking up to the fact that you already had. Ask yourself, when did you start believing your light was too loud? Who told you your fire was dangerous instead of divine? How many times were you told to tone it down, act normal, be realistic? That wasn't guidance. It was containment. That wasn't love. It was fear disguised as advice. Because the moment you stand fully in your light, the illusion they built starts falling apart. And you need to understand this. There was nothing accidental about your doubt. It was manufactured. You were never too emotional. You were attuned. You were never overthinking. You were processing the things others can't even perceive. You weren't too intense. Your energy just broke their shallow filters. And the people who made you feel like a burden, they were threatened, not honest. Your light disturbed their darkness. Your truth made their comfort zones feel like cages. Your power disrupted their control. That's not a reflection of your flaws. That's confirmation of your frequency. They want you tame. They want you mild. They want you safe. But chosen ones, we were never built to be digestible. We weren't sent here to blend in. We're here to shake everything they convinced the world to settle for. And yes, your light comes with weight, with responsibility, with struggle, because carrying energy this potent in a world trained to suppress it, that's war. Internal, external, energetic, psychological. That's why you've questioned yourself. That's why you've carried guilt for simply being authentic. But guilt is just the residue of a world that was never designed for your kind of brilliance. You were never the problem. You were the glitch in their matrix. And here's what they didn't plan for: you remembering. Because when a chosen one stops doubting their light, they become unstoppable. When they reclaim their fire, the room shifts. People wake up. Energy shifts. Systems break. And the very same ones who once said, "You're too much," suddenly say, "How did you do it?" But by then, they're too late. The game is rigged until you stop playing small. The prison only works if you keep the door locked from the inside. The only real weapon they had was your self-doubt. And once you drop that, they've got nothing left. So stop treating your depth like a problem. Start treating it like your superpower. Your overthinking? That's called pattern recognition. Your intensity? That's called energetic presence. Your sensitivity? That's emotional intelligence turned up to a frequency most people haven't earned access to. You weren't too much. You were just too real for people still hiding from themselves. So from this moment forward, stop shrinking. Stop second-guessing. Stop asking for permission to be exactly who the universe handcrafted you to be. Because you were never meant to be small. You were meant to be seen, to be felt, to be remembered. You doubted your light, and that was their only win. Take it back, because once you remember how bright you really are, they won't even have the illusion of control left to hide behind. Number 3, your isolation wasn't rejection, it was calibration. Stars don't need crowds to shine, they just need space. You thought you were being abandoned, left behind, ignored. What you didn't see was that the universe was removing the noise. Because noise is the enemy of clarity, and you were never meant to blend in with the static. Your isolation was never rejection, it was calibration. They made you think being alone meant being broken. They made you believe that not fitting in meant something was wrong with you. But let's get one thing clear. The crowd was never your destination. It was your distraction. And the universe loved you enough to strip it away so you could finally hear the sound of your own power. You weren't lonely, you were being realigned. When you're chosen, you don't walk the easy road. You don't get handed community, applause, or understanding. You walk alone so that when you finally open your mouth to speak truth, it's your voice and not the echo of everyone else's fear. You were pulled away because where you were going required signal clarity. No interference, no static, no external opinions trying to override your internal knowing. So, the universe cleared the room. And at first, it hurt. Of course it did. Your nervous system had been conditioned to believe that presence equals value, that if no one's around, maybe you failed. But in truth, the silence wasn't a void. It was a sacred chamber. And it's where the universe began downloading everything into you that they were trying to keep you too distracted to receive. You weren't being left out. You were being pulled above. And the pain of that? It wasn't punishment. It was purification. The chosen are always separated before they're seen. It's a universal law. Think about it. Nikola Tesla died isolated, misunderstood, while the world stole and watered down his brilliance. Van Gogh created in madness and silence before the world ever called it art. Malcolm X spent years rejected, incarcerated, before his words shaped a generation. Their isolation didn't weaken them, it tempered them. You too were sent to the shadows, not to shrink, but to sharpen. And you were never truly alone. You were just around people who couldn't hear your frequency. They couldn't recognize you because they weren't tuned to your station. You were vibrating at a level that made their comfort zones crack. And so instead of rising, they pushed you away. But that wasn't rejection. That was evolution in disguise. Let them go. Let the silence stretch. Let the empty rooms echo. Because every minute you thought you were being forgotten, you were actually being remembered by the universe itself. Positioned, protected, recalibrated. Your isolation was the training ground. It's where your spirit grew teeth. It's where your energy became unshakable. It's where the universe fine-tuned your vision and amplified your signal, so that when the moment came, you would speak, move, and act with clarity that couldn't be corrupted. The silence was sacred, and some of you still don't see that. You're still grieving the ones who walked away, still questioning why the support never showed up, still blaming yourself for being hard to understand. But let me remind you, stars aren't designed to be understood. They're designed to be witnessed, and they shine brightest in solitude. What felt like abandonment was actually alignment. You were being taken out of sync with mediocrity, separated from average vibrations, pulled away from comfort because comfort was never going to wake you up. You needed the cold. You needed the stillness. You needed to hear yourself again. Because the world is loud. It's full of people projecting their fear onto you, speaking from wounds, labeling your power as arrogance and your intensity as madness. And the universe had to disconnect you so you could remember the original signal, the one inside your chest. the one that doesn't come from culture or conditioning, the one that comes from source. So if you're still in that season of isolation, good. Let it do what it came to do. Let it forge you. Let it strip away every false version of you they tried to build in your head. Because the real you, the one you're becoming in the silence, that version is untouchable. And when your time comes to step back into the world, you won't be walking in looking for a place to fit. You'll be moving like a signal tower, clear, charged, connected, not seeking a crowd, but commanding alignment. And those who couldn't recognize you before, they'll feel your presence before you even speak. That's what calibration does. It doesn't make you louder, it makes you undeniable. So stop mourning your separation. Start honoring it. Because your isolation, it was never your downfall. It was your initiation. Number 4. They feared your energy, so they sent distractions. They couldn't handle your vibration, so they buried you in noise. They knew they couldn't match your frequency, so they launched a war of distraction, not with bullets, but with noise, with chaos, with confusion, with people and problems that felt urgent but were designed to keep you exhausted and disconnected. Because when your energy threatens the structure of control, they don't come for your body, they come for your focus. Your mind was the battlefield. Your clarity was the target. You ever wonder why your life has felt like one long string of disruptions? Why every time you started to feel peace, something would crash in and pull you back into survival mode? That wasn't a coincidence. That was calculated. They didn't need to defeat you. They just needed to distract you long enough that you'd never become who you truly are. Because here's the truth. Your energy is rare. It doesn't just light up rooms. It changes the blueprint of everything around it. When you walk in, tuned to your truth, fake falls apart. Lies can't breathe. People feel exposed. Systems tremble. That's not because you're arrogant or too intense. It's because your vibration is a threat to everything built on control, manipulation, and comfort zone living. So what did they do? They sent distraction after distraction, people who drained your soul, opportunities that led nowhere, relationships that felt like roller coasters, emotions that didn't belong to you, fog in your brain, weight on your chest. You started doubting yourself not because you were weak, but because you were under attack by design. They made you believe the chaos was normal. That burnout was just part of the hustle. That confusion was a sign to settle. That being surrounded by energy vampires was just life. But all of it had one purpose: keep you too tired to remember your own power. Because once you remember, they lose. You weren't lazy, you were overstimulated. You weren't unmotivated, you were misdirected. They knew that if they could just keep your energy scattered, answering texts, fixing other people's messes, doubting your intuition, chasing the next shiny thing, you'd never sit still long enough to tune back into your signal. That's how energy manipulation works. It's not always aggressive. It's subtle. It looks like busyness. It feels like stress. It wears the face of being needed. It comes wrapped in urgency. And while you're running around putting out fires, your frequency is being silently sabotaged. Because a distracted chosen one is as powerless as a sleeping giant. They don't fear your potential. They fear your alignment. Because when your energy is focused, when your power isn't being leaked into dead-end people, low-level situations, and emotional roller coasters, you become dangerous in the best way possible. You become magnetic, clear, inevitable, and you start to notice it, don't you? The shift. The moment you begin pulling your energy back to yourself, the distractions intensify. People from the past resurface. Old triggers get reactivated. Drama finds you even when you've gone silent. That's not random, it's resistance. The system senses your awakening, and it panics. It throws everything it can to keep you spiraling. Because once you get still, you get clear. Once you get clear, you get intentional. And once you move with intention, it's over for them. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed, scattered, exhausted, stuck, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've been pouring your sacred energy into distractions that were engineered to delay your rise. The real question is, will you take your power back? Will you cut the cords? Will you sit in the silence long enough to hear your own frequency again? Will you be brave enough to stop running in circles and start standing in your light? Because the distractions won't stop. But your attention is currency. And when you spend it wisely on your healing, your purpose, your truth, the illusion begins to fall apart. The chaos loses its grip, and those who once fed off your energy are left starving. You were never meant to chase every beep, every buzz, every drama, every fire. You were meant to radiate. You were meant to move like a storm of purpose, undistracted, untouchable, undeniable, and they knew that. That's why they sent the chaos. That's why they buried you in noise. That's why your soul's signal was constantly drowned out by other people's needs, fake problems, endless scrolling, mindless routines. Because the one thing they fear more than your voice is your focus. So now, you choose. Will you keep feeding distractions that were never yours to carry? Or will you reclaim the energy that was always meant to shake the world? Because they couldn't handle your vibration, so they tried to bury it. But now, it's breaking through. Number 5. Your pain was programmed, not personal. They hit you early, hoping you'd never look deeper. Your pain was never personal. It was strategic. And the sooner you understand that, the faster you take your power back. What you thought were random tragedies, bad luck, or just your story was never random. It was engineered, calculated, a system of psychological warfare designed to keep you fragmented, disoriented, and afraid of your own reflection. They needed you confused. They needed you numb. They needed you broken just enough to keep functioning, but never enough to truly wake up. And that's the most sinister part. They didn't want to destroy you completely. They wanted you half alive, still moving, still serving their machine, still doubting yourself at every step, but never questioning why the pain came so early, so hard, and so often. Ask yourself, why did the attack start before you even knew who you were? Why was your childhood laced with confusion, betrayal, abandonment, chaos? Why were you dealing with trauma before you even had language to describe it? Because they saw something in you before you did. Something powerful, something ancient, something they couldn't control unless they crushed it early. So they hit you with emotional warfare. They embedded wounds so deep, they hoped you'd spend your whole life managing pain instead of unlocking power. They knew if they hit you young, they could rewire your entire self-concept before you had the tools to defend it. And that's exactly what they did. They made you question your worth. They filled your early life with figures who didn't protect you, who didn't see you, who mirrored the belief that you didn't matter. That wasn't coincidence. That was conditioning. The goal was to make sure that by the time your power started waking up, you'd already been taught to hate your own light. But here's what they didn't plan for. They didn't plan on your resilience. They didn't plan on your ability to decode patterns, to look your trauma in the face and say, "You don't own me anymore." They didn't expect you to start asking dangerous questions. Why did that happen? Who benefited from my silence? What version of myself was I trained to become? They thought you'd stay asleep in your suffering. They thought you'd just cope and conform. But instead, you started remembering. And the moment a chosen one starts connecting the dots, the game changes. Because pain doesn't just break you, it teaches you. And once you stop running from it, once you lean into the discomfort, you start hearing the message behind the mess. They didn't hurt you because you were weak. They hurt you because you were powerful. They flooded your life with pain, hoping you'd drown in it. But you didn't. You're still here. You're still rising. And now, you're not just healing, you're seeing clearly. And once you see, you can't unsee. You realize the trauma was timed. The betrayals were calculated. The chaos had choreography. It was all part of a larger program to keep the chosen ones too wounded to step into their frequency. Because a chosen one in pain is manageable. A chosen one in power, unstoppable. They taught you to carry shame that was never yours. They passed down generational fear like it was inheritance. They normalized dysfunction and told you it was love. And you swallowed it because you were still forming, still open, still trusting. They made pain your foundation so you'd never believe in the house you were meant to build. But now, you're rebuilding, rewriting, reprogramming. The code is breaking. You are no longer seeing your scars as shame. You're seeing them as blueprints of survival. And here's what makes them panic now. You're using what they did to fuel your evolution. The same pain they thought would silence you is becoming your clarity, your purpose, your power. They can't stop it now, because the illusion only works when you believe it's all just personal. But now, you know it was targeted. You weren't cursed. You were marked. You weren't punished. You were prepared. Your pain was not the end. It was the beginning of the greatest plot twist in their story, your return. Because when a chosen one stops running from their pain, they don't just heal, they rise. And when they rise, everything the enemy built on their brokenness begins to crumble. So look at every wound they gave you, and understand this. It was never about what happened. It was always about what they were trying to prevent. Your clarity, your voice, your energy, your rebellion, your activation. They hoped the pain would keep you in survival mode. But now, you're thriving in a system that was built to see you fall. You're decoding every lie they told you about who you are. You're turning every wound into a weapon. And you're becoming the version of yourself they never wanted to meet. So yes, they hit you early. But it's too late now, because you looked deeper. And now, game over. Number 6. They copied your style, but couldn't touch your frequency. You were imitated, but never duplicated. First, they laughed. They called you crazy, extra, too deep, too intense, too weird. They mocked your vision, questioned your moves, rolled their eyes at your fire. But then something strange happened. The very same ones who once clowned you started copying you. The style, the speech, the vibe, the aesthetic, the words you used when nobody was listening. Suddenly, they're echoing everywhere. But don't get it twisted. This isn't admiration. This is attempted replication, and it never works. Because while they might imitate your style, they can never touch your frequency. See, there's something terrifying to this system about originality, especially when it's real, especially when it isn't taught, bought, or borrowed. And you didn't become who you are by reading it in a book or watching it in a video. You broke into yourself. You walked through pain, through fire, through isolation, through silence, and came out carrying a signal the world didn't recognize but couldn't ignore. And that's exactly why they feared you, and then tried to become you. But here's the thing, frequency can't be faked. You can steal the words, but not the weight behind them. You can mimic the look, but not the energy that shakes a room without a single sound. Because what makes you powerful isn't what they can see. It's what they can't decode. It's the vibration underneath everything you touch. And you earned that. You bled for that. They want the shine, but not the shadow work. They want the crown, but not the cost. And that's why it always falls flat. They wonder why they can dress like you, talk like you, move like you, and still not get the results, still not get the presence, still not spark the same kind of ripple in the people around them. But you know why? Because you didn't download your essence from trends. You were chosen by the universe to carry something that can't be copied, cloned, or co-signed. Your presence disrupts. It exposes. It awakens. That's not charisma. It's alignment. And they can't fake what you built in silence. While they were performing, you were transforming. While they were watching, you were becoming. And that's the gap they'll never cross. Think about it. How many times have people rejected you only to turn around and repackage your very essence as their own? They didn't understand you, but they saw the effect you had, the way people shifted around you, the way your words stuck in minds, the way your silence made more noise than their shouting. And they wanted it. They just didn't want to do the inner work to become it. But the truth always reveals itself, because there's something off about imitation. It's all surface, no soul. And the soul, that's what carries the charge. That's what makes the difference between influence and impact. You didn't come here to influence. You came here to ignite. You didn't show up to be liked. You showed up to wake people up. So don't shrink just because your light's being copied. Don't dim just because your essence is being diluted. Let them try. Let them study. Let them mirror and mimic and mold themselves in your image. Because every time they try to replicate what was divinely embedded in your DNA, they remind the world that you were the origin, not the echo. You're not being copied because you're trendy. You're being copied because your energy cracked the code they've been trying to fake their way into for years. And they can't stand that. But you don't need to clap back. You don't need to compete. Because imitation doesn't threaten the real thing. It confirms it. You are the blueprint, the original vibration, the one who moves differently because you were built differently. And no matter how much they try to walk like you, they'll never carry the storms you survived to become this version of you. Because that's what they always forget. Style can be copied. Frequency must be earned. And what flows through you, it didn't come cheap. It came through pain, through power, through rising again and again when you had every excuse to stay down. So next time they try to wear your energy like a costume, just smile. Because deep down, they know what you already do. They can dress like you, but they will never be you. Number 7. You thought you were cursed. You were being protected. What didn't happen for you was happening for you. You didn't lose it, you were spared. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What felt like abandonment was actually the universe guarding your path like sacred ground. That closed door, that delay, that collapse that broke your heart. It wasn't the universe turning on you. It was the universe standing in front of you, arms wide, saying, "Not this, not yet, not them." Because chosen ones don't just get opportunities, they get alignment. And anything that threatens that alignment, even if it looks good on the outside, becomes a target for removal. You didn't get denied because you weren't worthy. You got denied because you were too valuable to be misused. But let's be real, it didn't feel like protection, did it? It felt like you were cursed, like you were walking around with some invisible weight, some kind of cosmic bad luck that made everything fall apart the second you started to believe in it. You watched others succeed with half the effort, saw people rise with no depth, no heart, no truth. Meanwhile, you kept hitting walls, losing people, watching opportunities slip through your fingers like smoke. And you asked yourself, why? What's wrong with me? But here's what was really happening. The universe wasn't letting just anything stick to your path. It was filtering, ruthlessly, relentlessly, for your own protection. Because not everything that glitters serves your rise. Not everyone who smiles deserves access to your energy. And not every open door leads somewhere you're meant to go. You thought you were cursed because the relationships kept breaking. But those relationships were never built to hold the weight of your truth. They would have collapsed later, after you'd built everything around them. So the universe let them break early, while it still cost less. You thought you were cursed because the job fell through. But that job would have drained your soul, buried your creativity, numbed your spirit, and you would have mistaken comfort for peace. So the universe yanked it before the illusion could set in. You thought you were cursed because you missed that opportunity, that deal, that moment everyone told you was once in a lifetime. But they didn't see what the universe saw. They didn't see how small it was compared to what's actually meant for you. So the universe let it pass you by, because chasing that would have meant abandoning your higher timeline. You see it now, don't you? Those moments weren't punishments. They were protection orders. And the universe doesn't explain itself when it's protecting something sacred. It just moves, swiftly, violently if necessary. It will shake your life, strip your surroundings, cancel your plans, burn the bridges you keep trying to walk back across. Not because it wants you to suffer, but because it refuses to let you settle. Because your rise is not negotiable. Because your energy is not common. Because your destiny isn't something to be handed out to whoever shows up first. It's something that has to be earned, aligned, and protected at all costs. So no, you were never cursed. You were being carried. And now, if you look back with open eyes, you'll start to see the patterns. The people who left before their mask slipped. The deals that vanished before you got trapped in obligation. The connections that ghosted you before they could drain you dry. The moves that didn't work out because they would have pulled you off course. Everything that broke, broke for a reason. Everything that left, left for a reason. Everything that didn't happen was the universe's protection disguised as loss. And that's the problem with being chosen. The universe doesn't coddle you. It doesn't always give you what you want. It gives you what you need, even if that means breaking your heart in the process. Because your path is not built for convenience, it's built for impact. And impact requires clarity, strength, and alignment. So maybe now you'll stop mourning what didn't work out. Maybe now you'll stop blaming yourself for what walked away. Maybe now you'll realize that every so-called setback was really a setup for something your soul signed up for long before this life even started. You're not cursed, you're chosen. And chosen ones don't get everything. They get everything that matters. Because when your energy is that rare, the universe doesn't gamble. It guards. Number 8. Your mind wasn't broken. It was under attack. The war was always for your perception, not your possessions. They were never after your money, not your status, not your career, your followers, your relationships, or your lifestyle. Those things were just distractions, pawns on a much bigger chessboard. The real war. It's been in your mind since day one, because if they could hijack your perception, they didn't need to steal your crown. You'd hand it over yourself. And you almost did. They didn't break you with bullets. They broke you with beliefs, installed them like viruses, one lie at a time, whispered into your consciousness until it sounded like your own voice. You're not good enough. You're not ready. You're too broken. No one cares. You thought those thoughts were yours, but they weren't. They were programmed, installed into you through repetition, trauma, environment, subtle manipulation. Because they knew that if you ever saw yourself clearly, fully, unfiltered, you would become unstoppable. They didn't want you to be broken. They wanted you to believe you were broken. Because that belief alone, that's all it took to slow you down. You didn't need chains if you questioned every move. You didn't need bars if your mind became your prison. They didn't need to stop you from dreaming. They just needed to convince you your dreams were unrealistic. They didn't need to silence you. They just had to make you believe no one was listening. It's psychological warfare, and it started early. From the moment you began to think for yourself, they began to shape how you thought. School didn't teach you freedom, it taught you obedience. Culture didn't teach you authenticity, it taught you comparison. The media didn't feed your mind, it conditioned it. The system didn't want you enlightened, it wanted you entertained, exhausted, and dependent. Why? Because the moment a chosen one thinks clearly, the system collapses. Because we're not talking about regular people here. We're talking about you, a chosen one. And chosen ones carry something different, not just ideas, not just dreams, but frequency. And if that frequency is unleashed, it vibrates at a level that shatters illusions, dissolves lies, exposes systems, and activates everyone it touches. That's why they had to hack your perception. Because if you ever remembered, truly remembered, who you were, everything they built would fall. But here's the part they never planned for. You're rebooting. The fog is lifting. The programming is glitching. And your mind, it's starting to wake up. You're starting to see through the patterns. You're starting to catch yourself mid-thought, asking, wait, whose voice is that? You're questioning the narrative. You're rewriting the code. And even if it feels subtle right now, even if it's messy, slow, or uncomfortable, make no mistake, they feel it. They feel the system trembling, because your clarity is returning. And once your perception clears, everything changes. What you used to chase, you now walk away from. What used to trigger you, you now see through. What used to scare you, you now face without flinching. And that shift? That's what makes you powerful again. Because they never had real power over you. They just convinced you you didn't have any. But now, the veil is lifting. And with it, the fear dissolves. The doubt starts to quiet. The sabotage slows down. Because you're waking up to your own thoughts and realizing that half of them never belonged to you in the first place. And here's the real truth they never wanted you to know. Your mind was never broken. It was hijacked. But underneath the noise, the loops, the programming, you've always been whole. Your intuition, still intact. Your vision, still there. Your purpose, waiting patiently beneath the static. You're not late. You're right on time. The viruses are being deleted. The system is rebooting. And the clarity that's coming, it's going to burn everything they built on your confusion to the ground. You were never lost. You were targeted. And now, you're back online. And now you see it. Every setback, every distraction, every lie planted in your mind. It wasn't coincidence, it was war. And despite it all, you're still here, still rising, still remembering. The illusion is breaking because you're breaking through. So here's the final move. Own it. Step fully into the power they feared from the beginning. If this hit your soul, drop the number 77 in the comments to let the world know you're awake. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another chosen one who needs to hear this. The storm has arrived, and you're the lightning, and you